All right, let's talk about a productivity hack that's over 2,000 years old. It was literally designed for a world with no books, no internet, nothing. And you know what? It might just be the perfect tool to help us organize our completely overloaded modern minds. So let's dive in.
I mean, just think about it for a second. In this age of endless information, how do you actually remember what truly matters? We're just constantly bombarded with data, news, notifications. It's a fire hose. So how do we cut through all that noise and hold on to the kind of wisdom that can actually change our lives? Well, it turns out this is not a new problem. Not at all.
Okay, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at why this system was even needed in the first place, this ancient information problem. Then, we'll get into the absolute genius of using numbers to organize ideas. After that, we'll see it in action with some really cool examples. We'll even go a little deeper, beyond the lists, to find this hidden meaning in the structure itself. And finally, we'll bring it all back to today and see how you can use this ancient hack in your own life. All right, Section 1, an ancient information problem. We're talking about the challenge of remembering timeless wisdom. So imagine this, a time way, way before printing presses, or computers, or the phone in your pocket. A time when all these profound teachings had to be passed down orally, right? From one person to another, generation after generation. I mean, the risk of things getting lost in translation or just plain forgotten was huge. The challenge wasn't just about memorization. It was about making this huge body of wisdom actually accessible, practical for daily life. You needed more than a good memory. You needed a system, like a mental filing cabinet. Which brings us to Section 2, the genius of numbers. This is about a revolutionary filing system for the mind. And the solution they came up with? It was just brilliant in its simplicity. It's a collection of texts called the Anguttara Nikaya, which basically means the Numbered Discourses. And this thing wasn't just a book. It was a completely revolutionary system for organizing knowledge. So what is it exactly? Well, it's a huge collection of thousands of short teachings, or suttas. But here's the kicker, the part that makes it so unique. They aren't arranged by topic or by date. Nope. They're organized by number. There's a book of the ones, a book of the twos, a book of the threes, all the way up to the book of the 11s. Wild, right? And check out this quote, because it really reveals the incredible intentionality behind this whole thing. It says, their method was to reduce the statements of the Dhamma to their simplest, meaningful elements, then reassemble them. The ancient editors, or redactors, as scholars call them, they weren't just randomly filing stuff away. They were master curators. They took the Dhamma, the core teachings or truths, and they broke them all down into their simplest parts. Why? To make them super easy to learn, remember, and then teach to someone else. So it all comes down to this really powerful three-step process. Step 1, you distill the teachings. Take a big, complex idea and boil it down to its absolute core components. Step 2, you organize it by number. Group those core parts into a numbered list. 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, and so on. And then Step 3, you create a mental map. That list becomes a hook, a framework in your mind that makes the entire teaching instantly recallable. It's genius. Okay, on to Section 3, wisdom by the numbers. Look, theory is one thing, but this system really, really comes alive when you see it in action. So let's check out a few examples and see how these lists turn abstract ideas into concrete, memorable wisdom. Let's start with number 2. The Book of the Twos often explores the world of dualities, presenting us with a choice between 2 different paths. So, for example, there's this discourse on the 2 powers. It lays out a really clear choice. On one hand, you've got the power of reflection, which is just recognizing, hey, this bad conduct has painful results. But on the other hand, you've got the power of development, which is actively cultivating good conduct while giving up the bad. See what it's doing? The list itself frames wisdom not as some passive thought, but as a practical, actionable choice you have to make. All right, now let's move on to the 3s. The 3s often add this more spiritual or metaphorical layer. It's about moving beyond those simple good-bad dualities. And a really famous example is the 3 kinds of anger. Just look at these images. Is your anger like a line carved in stone, something that lingers for a long, long time? Or is it like a line drawn in sand that fades away more quickly? Or, and this is the goal, is it like a line drawn in water, something that vanishes almost instantly? It's brilliant, isn't it? The list isn't just data. It's a mirror for you to hold up to yourself. Okay, so let's see how the system scales up to tackle even more profound truths. Here's an example from the Book of the Fives. This is the list of the 5 things that cannot be had. And it's pretty blunt, that someone liable to old age should not grow old, that someone liable to sickness should not get sick, that someone liable to death should not die, that someone liable to ending should not end, and that someone liable to perishing should not perish. The structure here is just so direct and powerful. There's no room for argument. It systematically confronts us with these unavoidable facts of life, making the lesson both really sobering and totally inescapable. Okay, Section 4, Beyond the Lists. So we've seen this is a brilliant memory tool, right? But here's the next level, the real secret sauce of the numbered discourses. It's not just about the lists. The structure itself is the teaching. What I mean is, the numbering isn't random, not at all. The redactors, those ancient editors, they created these thematic arcs. They built a coherent philosophical path that takes you from simple ideas to really complex ones. The order of the books, from the 1s to the 11s, it's not an accident. It's a deliberate journey for the learner. They're guiding you step by step. The very act of moving through the numbers is part of the training. This quote here is just fantastic. It says, "This thematic arc is purely implied by the choices of the redactors." Think about that. It highlights the silent genius of these editors. They took hundreds of separate teachings, and just by arranging them in a specific order, they created this bigger, overarching story. They literally built a coherent philosophy purely through organization.
And this is what that path looks like. You start with the 1s, which are all about fostering focus and unifying the mind on a single point. Then you graduate to the 2s, where you learn to navigate the world of choices and dualities, good versus bad. The 3s then introduce a transcendent spiritual element, a way to escape that duality. And as you keep going to the 4s and beyond, you start building this more complete, holistic understanding of everything. It's a complete curriculum, hidden in plain sight. And that brings us to our final section, an ancient hack today. So what does a 2,000-year-old filing system have to do with us, right here, right now? Well, it turns out, everything. Let's connect this all the way back to that problem of information overload we started with. This ancient system gives us a totally timeless blueprint for learning. First, it reminds us of the incredible power of focusing on just one thing, like in the Book of the 1s. Second, it shows us the magic of breaking down any complex problem into a simple, memorable list. But I think the biggest takeaway is this. True wisdom isn't about how much you know, it's about how you organize what you know. Having a clear structure is what transforms all that raw data floating around into insight you can actually use in your life. So I'll leave you with this question, one that's inspired by the very first book of this ancient collection. In the middle of all the complexity, all the noise in your life, what is the one essential thing that really deserves your focus right now?